My name is Sarah Brennan. I am 39 years old, and I almost spent my 12th wedding anniversary angry at a man who deserved anything but that. I want to tell you this story because it is a story about assumptions, about the way we read silence, about what we decide is happening inside another person when they go quiet in a way we don't recognize, about how close I came to interpreting something completely backwards and what it would have cost us if I had. My husband's name is Paul. He is 42 years old. He is an engineer, the kind of engineer who explains things with diagrams drawn on napkins and finds genuine pleasure in the structural integrity of bridges and has opinions about load-bearing walls that he will share with you whether or not you asked. He is methodical. He is precise. He is, in the 11 years and 11 months I had known him at the start of this story, a man who had never once forgotten our anniversary. Not a single year. He marks it in his calendar in January. He has done this every year since we got married. In January, he opens his calendar to our anniversary date, and he writes 12 years in the same handwriting, in the same place, as if the act of writing it down is a form of honoring it. I know this because I have seen him do it, because we share a paper calendar on the kitchen wall, and every January I watch him flip to the right page and write it. It is one of the things I have loved about him, the deliberateness of it, the choice, made fresh each year, to mark the day as significant. Our 12th anniversary fell on a Saturday. By the Thursday before, Paul had said nothing about it. No mention of a reservation, no hint of a plan, no small sideways comment about the weekend that might suggest something was coming. Nothing. By Friday evening, I was hurt. I told myself I was not hurt. I told myself that plans could exist without being announced, that surprises required silence, that Paul was a planner and planners planned, and I should trust the 11 years of evidence I had. I made this argument to myself several times on Friday evening, while Paul sat at the kitchen table going through paperwork, with the focused quiet he gets when something at work is demanding his attention. He looked tired. He had looked tired for most of the month. I told myself, he's tired. He's busy. The plan is there, he just hasn't mentioned it. I almost believed myself. Saturday morning arrived. Paul made coffee. He brought me a cup the way he always does, without asking, because after 12 years he knows that I am not a person who functions before coffee, and that delivering it to wherever I am in the house is an act of love that I have come to rely on so completely I have stopped noticing it as a gesture. He set the cup on the nightstand. He said, "Morning." He went back downstairs. Nothing about the anniversary. I lay in bed with my coffee and felt something cold and specific settle in my chest. By 10 o'clock, I had moved from hurt to the particular kind of quietly furious that is worse than regular furious, because it is too dignified to express itself. I was doing laundry. I was folding things with unnecessary precision. Paul was in his office with the door half open, on a call, talking about something structural and serious in the low measured voice he uses for work. By noon, I had decided to say something. I went looking for the reservation. This is not something I am proud of. I want to be honest about what I did and why. I went to his desk. He was in the kitchen making lunch, and I opened his laptop. Not to spy, I told myself, to confirm, to find the reservation that would explain everything, the one he had made weeks ago at the restaurant we always went to, the one that would make this whole morning make sense. I just needed to see it. I needed the proof that I had been right to trust the 11 years of evidence. I opened his email. I searched reservation. There was no reservation. I stared at the screen for a moment. Then, because I was looking and the search was open, and the alternative was closing the laptop and going back upstairs to continue folding laundry with unnecessary precision, I scrolled. I found something else. Not a reservation. Not evidence of a forgotten anniversary. Something I had not been looking for and could not have anticipated, and which, when I understood what I was reading, made me sit down in his desk chair and put my hand over my mouth. It was an email thread. Long, 40 or 50 messages, over the course of a month and a half. The subject line was a name I recognized. Thomas Keane. Thomas Keane was my father. My father died 14 months ago. A stroke, fast, in the kitchen of the house I grew up in, on a Tuesday morning in November when I was 300 miles away, and got the call while I was in the middle of a meeting I can no longer remember anything about. He was 71 years old. He had retired the previous spring and had plans. Specific, enumerated plans, the list of which he had shared with me on the phone the week before he died, slightly sheepish about how many of them involve fishing. He and Paul had not, while my father was alive, been close in the conventional sense. They were not close the way some fathers and sons-in-law are close, built around regular calls and shared hobbies, and the easy affection of men who have chosen each other. They were close in a quieter way, the way that develops between two careful, precise, unshowy people who recognize each other as kindred without quite saying so. Paul drove 3 hours to help my father install a deck the summer before he died. He came back sunburned, quietly pleased with himself, and reported on the structural integrity of the project, with the focus of a man who had genuinely enjoyed himself. He cried at my father's funeral, not in public, in the car, afterward, when he thought I was asleep. I was not asleep. I said nothing. I held his hand in the dark and did not make him explain it. The email thread was with my father's best friend. His name was Robert Callahan. He and my father had been friends since college, 45 years of friendship, the kind that has weathered everything and come out the other side. Robert had given a eulogy at my father's funeral that had made everyone in the room cry, including the funeral director. He lived 4 hours from us, in the town where he and my father had met, and I had seen him twice since the funeral. Once at a small gathering my mother had organized in the spring, once when he passed through our city, and we had coffee for an hour and talked about my father, and then did not talk about him, because sometimes that is what the people who love the same person do when they see each other. Paul had been emailing Robert since February. The first email was short. It said, "Robert, I hope you're well. I've been thinking about Tom a lot lately as our anniversary approaches. He was so proud of Sarah. I wanted to tell you that and to ask if you'd be willing to talk sometime. I have something I'd like your help with. Paul." I read the first email 3 times, then I read the rest of them. What Paul had been doing over the course of 6 weeks of emails with Robert Callahan was building something. Not a surprise dinner, not a gift in a box. Something that required Robert's help, because Robert was the only person who had certain things, certain photos, certain stories, certain memories that Paul needed and didn't have access to anywhere else. Paul had been collecting my father. That is the only way I know how to say it. He had been gathering him, gathering the pieces of him that existed outside my memory, outside the photographs I had, outside the stories I already knew. He had asked Robert for photographs from college, from the years before my mother, from the trips they'd taken, and the ordinary days he'd never thought to document because you don't document the ordinary days until they're gone. He had asked Robert to write down a story, just one, he said, the one you tell most often, the one that best explains who he was to someone who only knew him for 12 years. Robert had sent 11 photographs. He had written 4 pages. Paul had been organizing all of it into something. I could not tell exactly what from the emails. It was clear he had a design in mind, something physical, but the details were discussed in a shorthand I couldn't fully decode. What I could tell was that it wasn't finished, that it had taken longer than he'd planned, that it was not going to be ready for our anniversary the way he'd hoped. The last email in the thread was from the night before, Friday night, while I was lying in bed telling myself that plans could exist without being announced. It was from Paul to Robert. It said, "Robert, I'm not going to have it ready for tomorrow. I thought I would. I've been working on it every night this week, but it's not done, and I don't want to give her something unfinished. She'll get it when it's right. I hope you understand." I think Tom would have understood. He was the kind of man who knew the difference between done and done properly. "Thank you for everything you've sent me. I'll be in touch." Paul. I sat in his desk chair with his laptop open in front of me. I could hear him in the kitchen, the sound of him making sandwiches, the specific domestic sound of 12 years, the refrigerator, the knife on the cutting board, the drawer that sticks slightly and has to be lifted to close. I thought about the deck he had driven 3 hours to help build. I thought about the car, in the dark, after the funeral. I thought about January, every January, his handwriting in the calendar. I closed the laptop carefully. I went back upstairs. I sat on the edge of the bed for a moment. Then I went downstairs and into the kitchen, and I said, "Paul." He turned around from the counter. He had a sandwich in each hand. He looked at me. I don't know what my face was doing. I had not made any decisions about my face. He said, "What's wrong?" I said, "Nothing." I said, "Happy anniversary." He said, "Happy anniversary." He said it with the particular quality he has when he knows something is happening that hasn't been explained yet, the alert stillness of a careful man waiting. I said, "I love you." He put the sandwiches down. I am not going to tell you exactly what I told him. What I will tell you is that I told him I had looked and what I had found, and that I was not sorry I had looked, and I was not sorry I had found it. He was quiet for a long time. He was, I think, embarrassed in the way that very private people are embarrassed when something they were holding carefully is suddenly held by someone else. He had not wanted to give me something unfinished. He had been working on it every night. He said, "It's not done." I said, "I know." I read the email. He said, "I wanted it to be right." I said, "Paul, listen to me. Whatever it is, finished, unfinished, ready or not ready, it is already the best anniversary gift I have ever received. Not when it's done. Right now, today, knowing you've been doing this, that's the gift." He looked at the counter. He said, "I miss him too. I know he was your father, but I miss him." I said, "I know." He said, "I wanted to give you something that was—" He stopped. He started again. "I wanted to give you something that was more of him, because you can't have more of him. And I couldn't fix that. But I thought maybe I could give you more of him in a different way." I held my husband in the kitchen on our 12th anniversary, and I thought about what it means to be known by someone, really known. Not perfectly, not without misunderstanding, not without the occasional Friday evening of folded laundry and unnecessary precision and cold silence and hurt feelings and the whole complicated weather of 12 years. But known in the way that matters, known well enough that the thing he chose to make for me was not jewelry or a dinner or a gesture, but my father. Gathered carefully over 6 weeks from a man 4 hours away, not finished yet, probably never exactly finished, because some things don't finish. He gave it to me 3 weeks later. It was a book, handmade, properly bound, the kind of thing that requires more skill than I knew Paul had. Photographs on every other page, the ones Robert had sent alongside ones Paul had found, and some he'd printed from my phone without my knowing. On the opposite pages, text, Robert's 4 pages, edited and arranged, alongside other things Paul had collected from people I hadn't known he'd contacted. My mother, my father's sister, a man who had worked with him for 20 years and written 2 paragraphs that made me laugh out loud and then cry. On the last page, in Paul's handwriting, the kind he uses when he's writing something that matters. He was proud of you. He told me so. I wrote it down so you wouldn't forget. I have read it many times. I keep it on the nightstand, next to where Paul sets my coffee in the morning. I almost spent our 12th anniversary angry at a man who had been up every night that week trying to give me my father back. I have thought about that often, about how close I came to it, about the email I had half drafted in my head on Friday evening, the things I was preparing to say on Saturday morning, about what I would have missed if I had said them before I went looking. Watch what people do when they go quiet. Sometimes the silence is absence, sometimes it is work. Sometimes the most important thing happening in your house is happening in a room with the door closed, at a desk, late at night, when you're already asleep. Sometimes the person you love is building you something you didn't know you needed. Sometimes you find it by accident. If this story stayed with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to Tender Heart Stories. Drop your location in the comments. USA, UK, Canada, Australia, wherever you're watching from. Tell me, has someone you love ever done something quietly for you that you found out about by accident? See you in the next one.